Hello, and welcome to Transition Tea, the podcast dedicated to demystifying the world of healthcare transition and activation planning. I'm your host, Kelly Guzman, President and CEO of Yellow Brick Consulting. And today I am honored and excited to have Kim Scurr with us today. So Kim, welcome to our podcast. And can you share with our listeners a brief background about you?
Sure. Hi, Kelly. Nice to see you. My name is Kim Scurr. I'm the Vice President of Operations at UCSF Health. I started as a new graduate nurse at UCSF a long time ago, about 30 years ago. And I've had I worked in the intensive care nursery, and I've had a number of administrative jobs throughout my long tenure at UCSF, and met Kelly and her team when we were building the Mission Bay hospital campus in 2012. We moved in 2015. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for being here. So we're today tasting organic peppermint. I know tea is not your favorite to drink, but peppermint tea is good for your tummy. And I was sharing with you that it's David's tea, and the tea is handpicked from California and Oregon. So kind of kept some of this West Coast love alive. So
it's actually very delicious. I like it.
I'm a fan of David's tea. I think they do a really good job. So listeners, grab a cup, and we're gonna talk transition. So tell us about your entry into healthcare, your first job. You mentioned that you were a nurse. So what got you interested, excited, and how did you make it over to San Francisco?
Well, I had always wanted to be a nurse, and for one reason or another, wasn't really ready at the time that I was in college on the East Coast to kind of commit myself to that career and to that schooling. So I graduated from Penn State, and a friend of mine moved to California, and I just decided that sounded like a good adventure. And so with no job or anything, I just picked up and moved to San Francisco. And at that time, I started a job with GE selling widgets and electrical material to contractors, an inside sales job. And I did that for 5 years for GE Supply. And then when I met my then husband, I just decided that was a good time for me to go back to school and get the nursing degree that I had always wanted. And so at the end of my schooling, I had twin boys. And then I started at UCSF as a new graduate in the intensive care nursery when they were about 10.
Wow, I didn't realize you went straight into the intensive care nursery. It wasn't a common practice, I think.
No, interestingly enough, but as you know, nursing, there's just all these dips in the workforce. And I think I just entered at a time where they were looking for nurses. And so, yeah, I really expected that I was going to have 2 years on a med-surg floor before I could go into any type of specialized nursing. And I was going to be fine with that. But they were offering all these new graduate positions in different areas in the hospital. I knew I wanted to be in children's. And so I interviewed for the intensive care nursery, and I loved it. Loved every minute of it.
Fabulous. So you've had a lot of project experience. We met way back when we were opening up Mission Bay, but you've been involved in a lot of transition projects. So do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
Well, I mean, Mission Bay is always going to be very, very special to me. I mean, that symbolized the Children's Hospital having its own building. It really taught me so much personally and professionally. That was a big job that I don't think I had any idea what I was getting myself into. And yeah, I think we did a lot of really cool things in that building and with our culture. And yeah, I'm immensely proud of it. So that that currently is my favorite. That's currently my favorite project.
And it's a beautiful building. So how did your role in nursing, and you're a nurse manager and you're a nurse leader, so how did those skills help you for your role in transition and activation?
I mean, I feel like when you've done the work, then you're a good steward of what you're trying to build. You know, in this project, I was in charge of the operations planning. So the building in our instance, the building was wrapped basically. So even though we had been involved in the design, it was like a 10-year project before they really broke ground. And so, coming into that, I think being a nurse, being a provider, but being somebody who works in that building, it was very, very, very important to me, very important to the team to have nurses involved in the operations planning, having people come into the building. It was a very different design than what we were used to. And so, yeah, I always thought about it from the parent perspective, which I think most construction looks at family-centered care. That's the basis of most children's hospitals. So that was very important. And I think it was taken into account really well with the design team. But how nurses and providers work is incredibly important. And whether that's efficient and whether it's comfortable for them. And there was a lot involved in that. So yeah, I was happy that I had done the work, because it was important to me that the team feel comfortable there.
You had an extra curveball, I think, in terms of moving across the city and moving across San Francisco. So big, huge hills. And a lot of times we work with hospitals or new facilities, and they're either on the same campus or the staff can walk. So you had the challenge of this being across the city. So I remember you had like Fridays where people were on staff. So any advice you would give to people who are moving across town, and how do you get your staff engaged over to the new facility, managing the priorities of what's going on?
Well, I think that was really hard. There hadn't been a new hospital in the area for probably 30 years. And while everybody was really excited about moving, there were a lot of obstacles. So first of all of us still had our day jobs. I think now there is actually another hospital being built at UCSF, and people have been removed and placed in project management positions, solely to work on this new building, which is even bigger than Mission Bay, and probably a little bit more complicated. But so I think that was hard, is that you have to maintain the mothership. Like, we had to keep the children's hospital going where we were, and at the same time try to be visible in the building so that they wouldn't close a wall if we didn't have electrical there, or making sure that the bed placement was in the right spot. So I think it taxed the managers quite a bit. I think the units felt a little bit like there wasn't somebody there sometimes when they had to be at the other building. So fortunately we had good assistant managers and charge nurses and things like that, but that was definitely something that made it much more difficult.
Yeah, I think the Fridays, is a great idea, like, no meetings, having people over there. But you're right. I think just the nature of the work that you do from a patient care perspective, you rely on your managers. So I know you had super users and champions. So I definitely think all of those things contributed to making people feel comfortable, once they got in there. So now your role.
And a Friday, what is a Friday in the hospital world, right? It's not like a Friday, you know what I mean? Like, that was just a random day that I think we picked, but things happen in the hospital all the time. And, there was plenty of times where people had to run back to Parnassus from Mission Bay, if something
Yep.
happened and they needed to be there.
Or shuttle back, right? You guys shuttle back. Shuttle back.
Yeah, right. So, drove back.
So you have a role now as a nurse exec, and I think one of the things, and you're building this new hospital, and I've seen more and more people, nurses get involved at the front end of the design. So how do you advocate on behalf, like as part of the executive team, for the patient care staff to have space, to have the things that they need, maybe from some lessons learned at Mission Bay, and then as you're approaching this new facility?
Well, I think that there is a whole new team who are in charge of the operations planning for the new hospital. And you might remember we did have a nurse lead who was down at Mission Bay all the time, and she's taken a full-time job on that project. So that's great. I think everybody has contributed to our lessons learned with this new building. I think that it's an age-old problem though. Like there's never enough space. You're trying to build, right? Like you design the Taj Mahal because it's big and it takes care of everyone, but it's wildly expensive to build hospitals, and it's very expensive to build in California. And so, every little inch of that building matters. And, and you want it to be really focused on the patient, right? Because that's the patient-centered care, the patient and the team. So I think that everyone's doing a great job as far as like, giving people space, but I think it's still a challenge. I think it's always a challenge to carve out all that you really need and want for your team. But I've seen the design, and I think it's really well done.
I would say we obviously this is what I do full time, so I certainly see there's some themes of like back of the house signage, like staff are lost, staff are confused, like they need signage to figure out where they're going, because even if it's a 200,000 square foot building, it's still a new building, so you need to have instructions or directions to get along. So any lessons learned from Mission Bay that you think you're like, okay, if I could do this again, or if I could share this lesson with somebody who's going through this, what would that be?
Well, I do think the wayfinding is really important. And, the regulations are different in different states, but in California, all the patient rooms had to be on the outside. And so the core is filled with offices. So, it really is a lot of hallways. And I think you remember the wayfinding was really challenging. And, we continued to refine it even after we moved in, because, people were just trying to find the fastest way to, get to OB from the intensive care nursery. And yeah, but I think that's probably a lesson too, is you try to do as much as you can up front, right? And you try to anticipate all of these kinds of things. And, you have the wayfinding that you have, but you have to be in the building. And those dress rehearsals were really helpful, as you recall, with the wayfinding, right? Like when we had dress rehearsals, not just for the move, but like how we're going to like actually work in this unit. I think those were like really precious moments for us to kind of course correct on some of that wayfinding.
So you actually had a hospital with clinics attached to the facility, and I know from just the pediatric hospitals, you always have to do that extra level of risk assessment to keep the baby safe, to keep the patients safe. I know you use angel wings to open the doors to keep people in and out of certain spaces. So any lessons learned if somebody, with the clinic building being attached, that, you'd go back and say, it was a great idea to move all at the same time, or any kind of common themes with, the clinic building working together with the hospital?
I think it was great to have the clinic attached. It used to be that the clinic was across the street, right? And so if you needed to bring someone over to the hospital, or you needed to, to bring someone, let's say, to infusion, you were crossing a road, and you would be, being discharged from the hospital. I think that the nice thing is that the doors are all secured. It's all badge access from the second floor up. So the first floor, right, is the main thoroughfare lobby. But I think for the physicians who are in clinic and also, want to see patients, lining the clinic floors with the various departments in the hospital, that was, that's been super helpful, I think. Yeah. And I think if a patient gets sick in the clinic, right, people can get over there, easy to admit. I think everybody really enjoys having that contiguous.
I was going to ask about that. So, a lot of the questions that folks have is just, from responding to codes. So do you have the same code team being able to go to your ambulatory building, or do you have separate teams?
Yes, depending on whether it's a code white or a code blue. Yeah.
To use the same staff. Just in terms of any, your skills as a nurse exec and a nurse, and then as a project manager, there's a lot of different tools and skills and classes perhaps that you needed to take. So were there anything that you dreaded learning while you were going through school that you felt like this is an invaluable skill set that I have, or a lesson that I have, or not the lesson, but like a tool that you use with your work?
I don't think there was anything I dreaded about school. I have 3 degrees. I'm not a person who loves to go to school. I have appreciated all of those degrees and things that they gave me, but my first degree was in communications. And I honestly think that has seen me through my entire career. I can publicly speak. I can hold a meeting. I can write well. And, I think all of those tools, just as a leader, are really important. Now, as an executive, you start to hone those things down a little bit. And I think, one of the things you learn moving from the bedside into other roles is really making sure that you are clear about what it is you want, right? We can go real deep into the emotional aspects, and it gets, and the message can get blurry, I think. And so, being able to be very succinct about what you need, what the situation is, what you need, what you're asking people who may be non-clinical for is really important. And I think I learned that more on the job than I did in any of my degrees.
Yeah, definitely. Clear, consistent, concise communication. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're talking about children, right? Like, it's hard, it's emotional, and families, and, people who are struggling like that. That's what draws us all to the bedside. Right. But you need to be able to translate that in administration in a different way. It's a different skill set, and one that I think most nurses really need to practice.
So did you have any coaching, or, you said you did a lot of this as you're going through, and I know myself, like I was in many situations where I even thought in my mind, like, this never came up ever in any class I've ever taken. Like, how do you have this difficult conversation with the family? How do you share bad news? How do you come and approach this physician who's unapproachable? You know, how did you learn those skills, or was it all on the job, or did you have a mentor?
Well, that's different. Like the nursing piece, those conversations, I did have wonderful clinical mentors, like tremendous. But I also think that, you know, most people who go into nursing have a lot of empathy. And I think, you know, it's that allows you to sit and, you know, let a family, you know, unburden themselves on you to, you know, really be able to assess a situation and be there, you know, without judgment, you know, as they navigate things that are really, really, really scary. And I think in nursing too, sometimes you know the outcome well before the family. And, you know, being able to help them navigate and, you know, get from A to B is a skill that I think you learn. But I also think I just worked with phenomenal nurses in the intensive care nursery, just the best. And I watched them. And I think I had great role models for that. And also the physicians. I will say the physicians were so present, the attendings, and, you know, how they spoke to families was really tremendous. And I think that might be just a little bit indicative of children's hospitals. Like they're, you know, it's like that there because, you know, you're not necessarily talking to an infant, right? You have to talk to this whole family. And, you know, I've been in lots of conversations where the outcome, you know, wasn't exactly what we wanted. And, you know, seeing how people manage that, wonderful social workers. I think they were some of my best role models, to be honest. And then the providers, they were great. That was a wonderful place to learn.
I 100% agree with everything you said. And I know, you know, I worked in the PICU and the ED and had some really rough days. And, you know, I think definitely there's sometimes you take this home and it's emotional because it's hard and unexpected. But I do think that it does help me with perspective when I'm in a difficult situation, or you feel like you're in a difficult situation. Like I always go back and say, like, nobody died, nobody's going to die. There are way worse things that could happen. And it kind of grounds me. So I feel like I go back and I kind of use that as mine. So, and you are one of the most authentic leaders that I have ever met in my life. And I love you for that. And how do you stay true to like your core values when I've been around, I've been in healthcare for over 30 years, and I know there are very difficult conversations, very difficult decisions that have to be made. So how do you manage that, and how do you know, keep it all together?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I don't know how to not be an authentic leader. And I think, and it may just be also my personality, right? I can only be myself. And I think that people can tell, you know, they can tell if you know something, they can tell if you're confident about something, they can tell if you're not necessarily telling them the truth or you're BSing them about a certain situation. So I've just always found that it's better just to be as truthful and honest as possible. The other thing is that I love being a nurse. I love nursing. I loved taking care of these patients and their families. And in my previous job, right, that was just a very important role, is to, you know, meet families who are, you know, having challenging times. So for me, that authenticity, I think is what people deserve. And I think it helps when people know that, one, you know the work, and if you don't, you'll say it, and you know that you're not going to ask them for anything you're not asking of yourself. And I think I think that's just very, very important. But and a sense of humor, you know, I mean, these are really, when you think about some of the things that, happen in a nurse's day and a provider's day that go on in a hospital, like, it's deep. And so, most people I know and work with have really good senses of humor. And so if I think we're all going down like a slippery slope in a meeting or something like that, I'm typically going to try to flip it a little bit, because, right, nothing is as serious as what is happening inside those rooms, in my opinion. Yeah.
Definitely always smile and laugh when I'm with you. So thank you for that. Just a kind of a down a different path. So there are lots of competing priorities. So there's competing priorities for your project, for your day-to-day job, for your day-to-day life. So how do you manage your, like tips for managing your time, priorities? Like how do you prioritize what the most important things are so that you really can focus on those and then still have fun? I know you, hike, you go to games, you have a life. So how do you manage that and prioritize that and still maintain your mental health?
Well, I think, to be honest, that I really worked a lot. I was a workaholic. And part of it was just this intense desire to get things right, to make sure that I didn't leave things behind. I wanted to answer all my emails within 24 hours. I wanted people to not say, oh, I emailed you 2 weeks ago and I never heard. So there was a little bit, I think, that took away mostly probably from my family life, to be, just to be so connected to work all the time and to have, that type of responsibility. Interestingly, COVID, where I started to work more from home and doing these Zoom meetings, and where we were all forced to not be going in 100 different directions, has been just such a blessing, because we can get our work done in a reasonable amount of time, as it turns out. I think it's forced me personally to just be more present. I can get up and I can walk the dogs. I can, have tea. I'm taking a minute for myself. And I think it's been really valuable. And I would say to people who do work extensively that, they don't get that time back. And, everything will be there the next day. And being able just to prioritize what you do and leaving, that's probably the healthiest thing you can do for your team, right? Is to, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I, as you know, exercise. And that was like kind of my way of being able to, I would work out every single morning so that I could come in, to work and be fresh, or maybe a little tired. But that was a time for myself, right? And then, hopefully that promoted that we should have some good habits, because I don't know that everyone in healthcare got. Excuse me.
No, not at all. I know, definitely. I'm a morning wake up and work out person, and even if it's 10 minutes, like I'm addicted to the Fit On app, because they have like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it really does. It clears your head, and I would say 100% of the time I feel better when I'm done, and a little bit more energetic because I got my blood flowing, or at least breathing and stuff. So, I think bringing that positive attitude forward definitely helps. So do you use a paper calendar or a electronic calendar, or both?
I am horrible at that. I am. I mean, I'll tell you, it's an electronic calendar because I have my phone, but I have always had amazing admins.
Yes.
They have kept me on the straight and narrow as far as my calendar. I could just go by the seat of my pants half the time. So no, organization, not my forte.
Well, I'm going to say that, because I came from a place where I had an assistant and I never even knew it was on my calendar, like, because I didn't control it. So I completely get that, because there's so many people requesting your time that you really don't have time to manage that. But I have to say, like, leaving and then having to manage my own calendar, that was like a little bit of a learning curve. But I really like paper, because for me, when I write stuff down, I definitely use my electronic calendar. But the big things that I need to do and remember, like, I do have a little checklist that I love to check off and just make sure I get done for the week. So whether it's personal or work.
Well, to be clear, I am not good on the computer. So I love paper. Like, I'm probably the only person who still likes a binder with things in it that I could reference. So yeah. But as far as my calendar, no, I use the computer.
Well, you do an amazing job. So, all right. Final question is, if you could just provide advice to somebody who would like to become a nurse exec or to be transition planner, or part of a project team, what career advice would you give to them?
So they're all very different. And I think you should, all these roles are different. And I really believe you should talk to somebody who you admire, who you think, does a good job, to let you know what the opportunities are. And I think one thing for sure is let people know that you want opportunity like that. I remember talking to the COO at the time of Mission Bay and just being like, I'm ready for something new, right? And this is how I ended up getting this operations job for that campus. But, I had to let somebody know, and that wasn't easy for me, that I was ready for something else, or I was interested in something else. So I think you have to let your supervisors at whatever level know, I'm interested in doing something different. Maybe it's taking a leadership role in the unit, being a charge nurse, doing something like that. Like, I think those are the start. I think being a charge nurse, being, a clinical nurse 3, those were really helpful leadership roles. Taking on a project is a totally different, and I definitely didn't know what I was getting myself into. And it's a very different skill set. And I, in hindsight, would have done lots of things differently. I would say if you were going to be in charge of a big project, or, the operations wasn't the construction, you have to have a lot of patience. And I was not a very patient person at the time. I think that might be the intensive care nurse in me. Like, we have to get this done in 10 seconds. So, there's a lot of different personalities. There are so many constituents. You have to, have positive relationship with the construction team, which does not have a clue what you're so passionate about. They're not clinicians, right? They're very vested in that project. So I had to learn to be way more patient than I was. And that has actually helped me much, in a great way after we moved in and to this day. When I have large groups of people who are, disparate skill level, disparate departments, is to really have a lot of patience. You have to listen to what people are trying to tell you, and filter out what's right and what's not. You can't definitely please everybody. And then I think having a sense of team, there was a core group that, there was a restaurant across the street, and we were there frequently after work. And, sometimes we'd fight like kids. I mean, fight like siblings on the job. But then we would all go out and, get a bite to eat, maybe have a beer, and, remind each other that we were all there for one another. It was really an incredibly positive bonding experience. But it was taxing. So yeah, you have to be patient. You have to surround yourself with really smart people. And you really have to, everybody has to feel like they're a valued part of the team, because it is never about a single person. It's always about the collective. And everyone has to feel, everyone's proud of it. Everybody has to feel like they have a seat at the table, that their opinion counts. Yeah.
I love that, because I have never been on a project, and particularly a large project where you do have a core team like you did, where at some point in the project that they didn't all want to kill each other. And, because it's not always happy, but you put on your happy face and you present as a united team. And then you go behind the scenes and want to kill each other, and then realize like, oh, I didn't realize how much work you had. I think that's the hard thing too about this work is, it goes up and down, and, it doesn't just stay flat. And so sometimes it's really boring. And then there's so much work where, I remember I say to people, like, as you get closer to the building being turned over, don't volunteer, because you typically get these type A people who are like, I want to do everything and I want to do it right now. And they sign up for everything. And then there's always these curveballs that get thrown at you every day. And then it's overwhelming, and then you're exhausted. So I think it's great. And having those dinners and moments to bond and really appreciate like all those things that you said, that it really is important.
Well, I mean, yes, but we learned a lot of that too. I learned a lot of that from people around me, and I made a lot of mistakes, and everyone does. I mean, there's no perfect way to do something like this, right? You can only do the best that you can, and then hope whenever it happens the next time that you get, you learn from that. I mean, that was an incredibly important learning experience for me, and it wasn't always happy. So, but it certainly helped me as a person.
Yep, definitely. Lifelong learning and ongoing, change and challenges. So, all right. Well, we're going to move into our rapid fire questions and have a little bit of fun. So, I'll start off easy for you. So, your favorite city in the whole wide world?
Oh, maybe New York.
I love New York. How about the nickname that your parents used to call you and they still might?
Kimmy.
Kimmy. Oh, Giants or Steelers?
Steelers all the time.
You have your terrible towel?
Yes. I don't have it with me, but yeah, okay. I probably cried into it last week.
Oh, yeah, that was tragic. Oh, yeah. So invisibility or a super strength?
I think a super strength.
How about your favorite carnival food?
Oh gosh, I think a corn dog.
Ooh, me too. Say a word in French.
Oui.
What was your last Halloween costume?
Oh, we were the Clueless. My friend Julian and I were the Clueless girls. And I can't even remember now.
And would you rather lose 50% of your hair or gain 50% more hair?
Who wants to lose 50% of their hair?
Well, do you want to be hairy?
Well, on my head, yeah, I'd like 50% more.
What if it goes all over your body?
You mean like in general? Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh God. No, I'm not a hairy person.
All right, and the last one, why can't we tickle ourselves?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's weird. I don't know. I'm always wondering that. Okay.
I'm gonna try right now.
I know you go to the pedicure and but you can't do it to yourself. So who knows? If anybody
I don't know.
knows,
well, God, I'm gonna go Google that now.
Well, thank you, Kim, for your time. It is always a pleasure chatting with you. And can you share your LinkedIn profile with our guests if they want to connect with you?
Sure, please do. It's Kim Scurr, Scurr, UCSF.
Wonderful, thank you. So that's going to do it for our episode of Transition Tea, and I hope you liked our Moroccan mint tea here. Our next episode, we're going to be joined by another healthcare leader to chat over a couple of best practices, looking at new insights and the world of transition and activation expertise. So thank you for listening. If you want to hear more conversations like this one, please subscribe to our Transition Tea wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to hear or see live videos like this one, please follow our Yellow Brick YouTube channel. So until next time, cheers. Thank you, Kim.
Cheers. Thanks, Kelly. Good to see you.